Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Connor here in full swing. I hope you're doing fantastically well. And we are back here with a special guest from Redmen TV, Ben Kelly. Ben, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
No problem, mate. How's life in Liverpool treating you?
Not bad at all. I've been here now personally like just over 3 years. Moved here for uni. Um, Obviously, I love it. We've had a pretty nice 3 years in terms of football. You know, the first year was the first Champions League final. You go and win the thing in the second year, then you win the league. So it's not been too bad. And yeah, obviously we're just looking to kick on a bit now and hopefully defend it. But I'm sure we'll get into all that.
Definitely, mate. I guess probably the first thing, just in terms of Liverpool, I think it's an interesting sort of talking point. Is obviously we saw what happened towards the back end of the season, so the 1920 season, where obviously Liverpool won the league, 18 points clear, a monumental effort. But in terms of after that, Ben, is there a little bit of a correlation with the crowds not being there and Liverpool's form, or do you think that's just sort of coincidental and Liverpool have just won the title and that's that?
No, I think it is. I think there is a correlation, and I don't think that's necessarily a criticism of Liverpool. I think it's very well known that Liverpool use their crowds and they use the fans to get behind them, and they use that in the way that they play. You know, big Anfield nights, particularly in European games, are fueled by the fans. And I know that. I'm not just saying that. I know that because I've been there. You know, there's been nights over these last few years. You know, Barcelona, the Man City game, the Champions League, the Roma games, and things like that, where you know that the crowd are being that extra man for Liverpool. And when they've not got that behind them and they're used to it for so long, then I think it does make a difference. And again, I don't think that's necessarily a criticism, because why? You know, who could have predicted that at some point there would be no fans? So, you know, it's almost like how can you prepare for a life without fans when you're so used to having them all the time in the ground? So look, at the end of the day, I think not every performance after the lockdown was poor for Liverpool. We played very well against Chelsea. We were very good at home to Palace. But obviously, you know, on the flip side of that, there were some not so good games away at Arsenal, away at Manchester City. So for me now, we've had a couple of weeks off. We've obviously had a few pre-season games. We played on Saturday. We played Blackpool at home, won quite comfortably there, and they should just be ready to go again now. And hopefully they are. Hopefully we see in the first few weeks. We've got quite a tough start, and hopefully we get through that with a fair amount of points.
Yeah, so and you lead me on quite nicely there, Ben. So with regards to your tough start, how do you see, obviously, Anfield, an absolute fortress, something where, you know, probably I guess it's probably in Europe. I don't think there's a team with better form at home than Liverpool.
Mhm.
So in terms of obviously Leeds United coming on the first day, I've spoken to a couple of Liverpool fans previously, and I've sort of made the point of Norwich. Norwich came to Liverpool on the first day of the season as well. Are you drawing comparatives between Leeds and Norwich, or are you looking at Leeds as a completely different beast?
I'm looking at Leeds completely differently. I think I've never for me. It's been a long time, obviously, since Leeds were in the Premier League, and for me, I don't even remember the last time Leeds were in the Premier League. I'm 21. 16 years ago for me, I don't really remember the Leeds sides of the getting to the latter stage of the Champions League and all that. That's just not on my radar. So, but I'm aware of the history regarding Leeds, and I see them as a completely different level and stature of club to Norwich, in the sense of I'm kind of a bit bored of Norwich. Like this time last season, yeah, we get Norwich every now and then, and they never really make a splash in the Premier League. They just come up and they're just there for a season, and then they disappear again. Leeds have the potential for me, because they've got a fantastic manager, they've got some really talented players in the squad, to come up and actually have an impact. More like it's difficult to say that you'll have the same success as Wolves, but I'd put you closer to them than I would do to Norwich. And I think, by the way, that Sky and all the mainstream media will be absolutely rubbing their hands over the perspective of Leeds coming to Liverpool and winning on that opening weekend, because we haven't lost there in so long, and because it's the champions hosting the newly relegated Leeds, who have been away for so long in the first weekend of the season. If Leeds go and they win at Anfield on the opening weekend, I'm not sure you will, but if Leeds do manage to pull it off, that is one hell of a story for them all to be talking about. And honestly, everybody will be hoping for that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, Ben. I mean, I think we'd all be overjoyed by that, Leeds fans wise. But I think there's got to be a dose of realism as well. I'm thoroughly expecting an extremely tough game. I think it's going to be the quality level. I mean, obviously we used to quality teams in the Championship per se, but it's obviously on a different level. And we tested ourselves earlier on. We played Arsenal in the FA Cup. I don't know if you caught that, but
Yeah.
I mean to say they won the competition in the end, I'd say we were their toughest task. And I think teams are going to underestimate how much we run, how much we press, the intensity, and just what a good footballing team we are. And obviously, I'm setting myself up for a fall here, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. How do you obviously we're going to get to it a bit at the end of the score prediction, but just in terms of play and sort of tactically, how are Liverpool, do you think, going to set up for Leeds? Is it going to be the same sort of 4-3-3, or do you think Klopp's going to adapt a little bit?
No, I don't think Klopp necessarily adapts himself to anybody. I think we often go out with the same mentality. I think even against Leeds, who I know are a good football inside, I imagine that we're going to have a lot of the football, and we're going to dominate a lot of the play. That'll be down to Leeds then to try and make their moments count. When they do win the ball, maybe in the midfield area, how quickly can they break on Liverpool? Because Joe Gomez had a bit of a rocky end to the season. And he wasn't brilliant for England on Saturday. So, I don't know what his confidence levels will be like going into this, and whether or not Joel Matip's fit might have a big say on who actually starts against Van Dijk. But then Matip isn't the quickest. So, if you can get in behind us, then it might be an interesting way for Leeds to try and break us down. But as I say, I think Liverpool dominate a lot of the game. And I think it'll be down to how, as it is in most cases for Liverpool, how can Liverpool break down Leeds? We need moments of quality from our front three, which we often get. But also, I know it's probably talked about a lot, but I don't know how much it filters through down to you guys. But you look out for the fullbacks. The fullbacks are where we get the creativity from. It's not necessarily from the midfield. The midfield is its own entity in terms of the work rate it puts in and the breaking up of possession that it does in terms of Henderson and Wijnaldum, if he's still there, although he's being linked with a move away. The creativity and the quality deliveries into the box come from Andy Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold. That for me, they're the best fullback pairing in the world. I know Alphonso Davies is up there. But and I know there's other quality right backs out there, but for me, Trent Alexander-Arnold is the best fullback, full stop in the world. Andy Robertson is on the other side isn't a bad player to have at all. So that's where it's going to come from, the Liverpool. And if Liverpool go 1-0 up, if Liverpool take the lead, I fancy us to see it through and win the game.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a bit of a precarious position if Liverpool go 1-0 up for us. In terms of obviously we're speaking off air about the importance of certain players. With regards to, there's been a lot of talk about Jordan Henderson in terms of him being fit this week. Obviously, I don't know the specifics on that. Maybe you can update us on that. But as well, if Jordan Henderson isn't fit, how important is that for Leeds? Henderson not been in the starting lineup.
That's a massive boost for you guys. I mean, look, Jordan Henderson, towards the end of last season, he was being, touted for Player of the Year awards and all that stuff, and he gets that injury, and there's no real coincidence that Liverpool do jump off another level when Jordan Henderson disappears. He is honestly one of the most underrated midfielders in the Premier League. I don't think people really appreciate what he does, because the history behind it for me is that he took the armband off Steven Gerrard for Liverpool, and kind of by default, almost, people expected him to be Steven Gerrard, and they expected him to, get the goals and the assists at Steven Gerrard. They're completely different types of players. The problem was that Liverpool were so used, Liverpool and other rival fans of Liverpool and everybody looking in from Liverpool from the outside were so used to Liverpool having this captain that led by goals and assists on the pitch, and with these fantastic passes. And Henderson's passing is up to scratch, by the way, but obviously he doesn't get the same goals and assists that Gerrard does, but it took him a long time for him to kind of step out of that shadow. And it was only really until I'd say that sort of the 17-18 season where Liverpool went on and made that first Champions League final against Real Madrid in Kiev, where I think he really came into his own and suddenly then was recognised by a lot of Liverpool fans as a real leader, as well as his importance on the pitch. Liverpool played Brighton towards the end of the season after the lockdown, and that was a fantastic Liverpool performance. But Jordan Henderson really drove that. He gets a goal in that game. And honestly, I think that was the game he finds himself injured in, and it wasn't quite the same. Our midfield really does lack something when Henderson doesn't play. So if he's not fit, take that as a positive for you guys.
And is there any sort of update on that, Ben?
Well, as far as I'm aware, he wasn't involved at the weekend against Blackpool, although I mean, I was working, so I couldn't watch any of that. But he's getting there. So it might, I imagine the target will be Leeds, but we do also have Chelsea and Arsenal coming up. So we'll have those games in mind as well, because obviously if you rush him back too early, he ends up missing, another 5-6 games, and that's no good for us. So I'm hoping he'll be back, but at the moment there's been no real word on it. We'll have to wait for Klopp's press conference towards the end of the week, I think.
Are there any sort of threats that you look at from the Leeds side, Ben? Obviously, we've got Calvin Phillips, who was brought into the England side, who, you're just waxing lyrical about Henderson there. I think the Premier League's going to sort of take note of Calvin Phillips and how good he actually is. We've also got Jack Harrison, who we've got from City, and we've got, players of a decent ilk who I think are going to be able to sort of transition to the Premier League quite well. Is there anyone who specifically stands out for you?
I mean, for me, obviously, Pablo Hernandez is there. Having had Premier League experience before, he's going to be a big player for you this season. I mean, I don't really know enough about Leeds in the sense of I don't know who the real leaders are in the squad. I know you had Pontus Jansson, but he moved this time last year away. So other than that, I'm not too sure. But I think in terms of that experience, because I imagine that deep down the target is to just stay up this season and gain stability in the league. And for Hernandez, for me, it's a big sort of season for him to step up and show the way, having had previous experience in the league before, to try and get himself a few goals and be creative, and hopefully be that sort of guiding light for you guys in terms of staying up. I mean, I've never particularly rated Patrick Bamford, but he does start for you most weeks, so there must be something about him, and whether or not he can adapt to the Premier League. I've always seen him as a good Championship striker, but now obviously it's big on him now to really make that step up. But to be honest, the rest of the squad, I mean, I know of Helder Costa. I know, I've seen a few bits and bobs of him, but a lot of the Leeds players are kind of unknown entities, and I think they are for a lot of Premier League fans. We know, because the story with Leeds for me is at the moment is all about Marco Bielsa and what a fantastic manager Marco Bielsa is, and how highly Mauricio Pochettino and Pep Guardiola speak of Marco Bielsa. But as a result of that, you don't hear as much about the players. So that is where this season, where Premier League fans are going to learn a lot more about Leeds' squad, not just the manager.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point. And just, we're touching on the season. I think with Leeds, I think it was Fergie who said, obviously, Leeds and, Manchester United, who we don't speak of a lot on this channel, Ben, and Liverpool have this rivalry. But he said when Leeds are playing Manchester United, it was nasty. It was a bitter rivalry. And I think Leeds, like Liverpool, are sort of missing out on the fans. We've had 16 years now where we haven't been touched by mass tourism or economic value massively by the Premier League. We've not been touched really. So, do you think that do you find it basically a bit of a shame that you're not coming to Ellen Road at the weekend and we're getting that sort of nostalgic atmosphere that once used to grace the Premier League, Leeds and Liverpool quite nicely?
I mean, potentially, obviously, the trip to Ellen Road for us will come later on in the season. Hopefully, fans will be allowed back in by then. I do think it's a shame for Leeds fans that they're not going to have their trip to Anfield. In terms of that is one of the big away trips that you've not had for all this time. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the last time you'll have played Man United will have been that FA Cup game, wouldn't it? A few years back.
Yes, Ben. That was
Bedford. That would have. Imagine being in that away.
I was, mate.
Really? Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
Right. So that's to be honest. I mean, we had a quick chat off there. I don't mind Leeds at all, in the sense of we have this shared hatred for Man United, which I find quite funny. Obviously, we played you guys in the League Cup a few years back, and I remember the Leeds fans all singing "Stand Up If You Hate Man U," and the whole of Anfield kind of united over this hatred for Man United, and we all stood up and we all applauded and we all got on quite well. So that's my experience of Leeds, and I quite like that. And again, I've heard of Marco Bielsa, and I think this is quite an exciting squad. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys get on.
Yeah, definitely. And just touching back on the playing style, obviously, we Leeds fans will all know about, your key players, but how it's a really direct question. How, as a centre forward, do you beat Virgil van Dijk?
You can't. You've got to target his partner. I
Right.
think for you guys, whoever partners Virgil van Dijk at the weekend is, I mean, it always used to be Dejan Lovren. When Dejan Lovren played, there's real horrendous performances from Dejan Lovren, and yes, it's his fault that he's particularly not playing as well, but it is down to the fact that players like Romelu Lukaku, big centre forwards, would always target Lovren over Van Dijk. Van Dijk is, I can't speak highly enough of him. I know he's obviously very well rated across the football world, and he is worth the hype for me. He gets that. He gets to absolutely everything. Every cross that comes his way, every corner that comes his way, he gets to it. He stretches for it. He can reach it. He's just an absolute mountain of a man. I've been lucky enough to be in his presence once or twice, and he's absolutely huge. And honestly, he's just like, whenever I have the opportunity to talk to people who don't know as much about football, Virgil van Dijk is the first person that I try and speak about, because for Liverpool fans, and I think maybe, on a broader scale than that, he has actually changed the way that people look at defenders. Because when Liverpool paid their £75 million for Virgil van Dijk in that January, everybody kind of turned the nose up a bit. But actually, he's worth double that. You know what I mean? The way he transformed Liverpool at the time showed how much he was worth. And now you get you're getting centre backs going for more. Harry Maguire's gone for £80 million. I'm pretty convinced that Harry Maguire would never go for anywhere near that amount of money if Liverpool hadn't shown everybody how important a good centre back could be by signing Van Dijk. And it really has revolutionised for me how people look at centre backs and how people look at defending. People want to be centre backs now. Little kids want to be Virgil van Dijk. That never happened before. And I think, honestly, I can't speak highly enough of him. He's an absolute colossus. A Rolls Royce, I like to talk about him.
No, you're right. I mean, for me, and I'll probably get a bit of hate here, but he's the best he's best in the world in his position. I think he's up there with. I mean, obviously, accolade wise, he's won a lot so far with regards to Liverpool. But people naturally talk about John Terry, Vidic, Ferdinand in terms of honours won. But Van Dijk, if you're just looking at the natural quality of a player and how he dictates play, I still think he's the best. But
he's right up there. He's right up there. And in terms of current centre backs in the world now, people like to have this debate, but for me, he's the best centre back in the world, and it's not even close. It's not even close. Varane is a top player, but Real Madrid haven't been all that. Particularly across Europe this season, he got shown up against Manchester City. It's not even close. He's the best centre back in the world right now.
With regards to your fullbacks, obviously the best fullbacks in the world for me as well. Now, there's always been an interesting point of criticism in terms of their defensive work. Now, Robertson for me is obviously a little bit better defensively than Trent, but Trent's been improving. But is that somewhere where maybe Leeds could get a little bit of an advantage down those flanks?
Potentially. I don't necessarily think it's a shortage of quality in actual defending. I think the problem that Liverpool have, and I say it's a problem because it benefits us more than it hinders us, is that Liverpool's positioning of the fullbacks is sometimes what catches them out. So it's not necessarily the fact that they're poor one-on-one defensively. It's the fact that they're told to play very high up the field, and suddenly that does leave spaces. Now, more often than not, the midfield cover that. That's the role really of the eight. Say, for example, it's Henderson and Wijnaldum. They cover those spaces. But as a fullback, if you're high up the field and that long ball is played over the top of you, you've got to get back, set yourself, and then be prepared to go on and defend against a player trying to take you on. You're bound to be caught out one or two times. I think with Trent, he gets unfair stick because there was quite a few performances in his early Liverpool career. He struggled in a couple of games against Wilfred Zaha, against Palace. Rashford had him a couple of times. Well, this was a good couple of years ago now, but those games have kind of stuck in the narrative for Trent. But for every good game that he's had, for every bad game that he's had, there genuinely are 5 or 6 really good defensive performances from him. Go and watch his performance against Leroy Sané in the Champions League in the first leg at Anfield in 2018. He completely takes Leroy Sané out the game for 90 minutes. Champions League finals, Ronaldo didn't really have a sniff in that game. There were other problems with Liverpool's defending in that game, particularly the goalkeeper, but Trent Alexander-Arnold was one of the best players on the pitch. So, they really are, at the end of the day, he's played in and won another Champions League final against some top-class players like Harry Kane, Heung-min Son, Christian Eriksen, who all played in that game for Tottenham. So it is a little bit. I think some of the criticism he gets is unfair sometimes, but it's not really a debate that he's definitely better at going forward than he is defending. But that's just because he's probably the best defender in the world at going forward. So you can't really argue with that. What Liverpool get out of him is much more valuable to us than maybe sometimes if he struggles at the back.
Yeah, I mean, throughout Bielsa's career, Chile, Argentina, Bilbao, wherever he's been, he never changes his approach, and which is just hellfire and fury, attacking football, intense. So I mean, Ben, it could go. I mean, I see it going one way. Unfortunately, it's just how I feel. But at the same time, it's great that two big clubs are going to be going at it again. And yeah, mate, I'm thoroughly looking forward to it. Can we get a final prediction from you, mate?
Final prediction. I think Liverpool will win. And I think for the first half an hour, Leeds will give it a go, and then slowly, I think Liverpool will take control of the game. So I'm going to go 2-0 to Liverpool.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good analysis. I think the first, I mean, the blueprint to focus on really is the Arsenal game. We had so many players rested. They had a near on full team out, and we absolutely battered them for 45 minutes, and we should have scored, but got to half time. Arsenal regrouped, came out a different side, brought a couple of big guns on, and that's where it changed a little bit. And I can see it going. I mean, like you'll know, Ben. And you've just said as well. You've just said that it's all about this first year staying in the Premier League. And what Leeds fans, including myself, have to get out of our mindsets is, of course we're going to try go toe to toe with Liverpool, but it's a mini league down at the bottom, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And I do think Leeds have the potential to break away from that. If they get themselves off to a good start. I mean, obviously beyond our game, I don't really know what your first six look like, but if you can get yourself a few, the problem that Norwich had last season for me was that they were doing exactly that. What I was saying before, Norwich came to Anfield and actually they gave it a bit of a go, and even though they were 4-0 down after half an hour or whatever it was, that actually people came away from that going, oh, Norwich, they can play a little bit of football and all that, but they just didn't have the quality to do it at Premier League level. Now, whether Leeds do, only time will tell. But I would certainly fancy you to go and break away from that mini league more than I would fancy you to finish like rock bottom. You know what I mean? Like completely flunk the season. I think you'd be more likely. I fancy Leeds to finish sort of mid-table, to be honest. I think that would be a good season for you guys.
Oh, it'd be incredible, mate. There's been a little talk just to finish on. I'm gonna go. My heart's saying 2-2, but my head's saying 3-1 Liverpool, so I'll go with the 3-1.
Okay, fair enough.
But just a little bit of chat as well, mate. I mean, Bielsa's like this individual for years and years now. I think it's just in terms of his trajectory and his projection, potential, probably the best word, and where he thinks he can get to in terms of playing ability. He's liked him for a couple of years now. What can you tell us about Harry Wilson?
Harry Wilson is a very, very good player. But unfortunately, he is at Liverpool. He is at the wrong stage of Liverpool as a club to really make it as a Liverpool player. I think under Brendan Rodgers and under Kenny Dalglish, Harry Wilson's definitely a player that would have had an opportunity in the first team by now. But the problem is that Liverpool are one of the best teams in the world, and he's not quite up to that standard. And we've had a lot of young players who have kind of fallen to the same fate over the last couple of seasons. Shea Ojo's just gone on loan again. Ovie Ejaria is another one that we've had to move on. It looks like Nat Phillips, who was on loan at Stuttgart last season, he looks like he might be moved on as well. And all these players under Brendan Rodgers probably would have had an opportunity in the side by now. But the problem is, how as a winger are you really going to dislodge Sadio Mane and Mo Salah as Harry Wilson? So for me, he was fantastic in the Championship, Harry Wilson, that season. He had the first loan with Hull, and then he obviously had the season under Frank Lampard at Derby. And I was kind of wanting them to do well because of that, and I was disappointed that they didn't come up. But for me, he'd be perfect for somebody like a Villa or a Newcastle or somebody along those lines, because he would play every week. I think he's brilliant in set pieces. Even yourselves, I mean, I'm not convinced. I don't completely know how you set up week by week, but just another nippy winger that I think can cause problems. I think he's a perfectly solid mid-table Premier League player, but unfortunately, he's not up there for European English and world champions. He's not at that level.
Do you see him as is he sort of more of a cam, or is he a defined winger?
I mean, so I used to watch him a lot in the youth games. He used to play for the under-23s in that first season, like when Steven Gerrard was manager of the under-18s, and he started there. And then Danny Ings was coming back from injury, so in that 17-18 season, it was him and Danny for that first half of the season playing for the under-23s, and he would kind of do both. And I think that's that's another positive for whoever picks him up, because you've got quite a fluid player there. For me, I view him as a winger, but I know he can play centrally. I think in that Derby team, they often used to have Mason Mount, who used to play down the middle, and therefore I think Lampard would play a 4-2-3-1, and he'd have Wilson either side and Mason Mount on one side or the other. So I see him more of a winger, but I know he can play down the middle. But again, Liverpool aren't set up for that. So if he wants to play as a number 10, we don't play with a conventional number 10. We play with a false 9. And that's always going to be for Roberto Firmino. In our midfield, there's no real place for Harry Wilson, because you're either playing as a number 6 who's nice and deep, or you're playing as an 8 who are kind of the two workhorse in midfield, breaking everything up. And that's not Harry Wilson's game. So if he's going to get into the Liverpool side, he needs to be playing as a winger or the false 9, although I don't think that's how he'd play. He needs to be playing as a winger, and he's never going to get in our team.
No, so yeah, I think that's been alluded to by a lot of people. I mean, Liverpool are just going forward; it's ridiculous. So I think, but I think I'd be quite happy with him. I would be quite happy with him. I think, especially under Bielsa, I think he'd really make him into a player. But Ben, this has been fantastic, mate. It's been a real pleasure. Ben from Redmen TV, thank you so much. We'll put I'm sure everyone's heard of you anyway, mate, and everything you do. But if they haven't, why don't you just let them know now?
Yeah, absolutely, guys. So yeah, we've got a YouTube channel that you can go out and check out for completely free. And then if you wanted to, I'm not sure why you would, but you can also head over to our website. We've got loads of extra content behind the paywall as well, which is where our final word will be this time on Monday. So however the game goes, you can hop over to the website and we do like an hour's in-depth discussion about the game. But also on Saturday night after the game, we'll have little snippets and stuff from YouTube going out pretty much straight afterwards. So if you guys wanted to see the Liverpool angle on whatever the result is, you can hop over there and go and have a look. But yeah, totally go and have a little check it out. Yeah,
definitely. Right, cheers, Ben, mate. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers, mate.